Racist quotes, such as those of the previous episode, are the last thing anyone familiar with the historical context of the time needs to be convinced that racial tolerance, let alone racial equality, were not exactly popular ideals at the time, especially amongst Lincoln and his allies. This was evidenced not only by their blatant racist statements regarding blacks, but also and especially by their genocide of Native Americans. In 1851, the Santee Sioux in Minnesota sold 24 million acres of land to the federal government for $1.4 million, but very little money was paid to the Sioux, and the federal government refused to pay the rest, breaking the treaty and causing a war to break out. Lincoln put General John Pope in command of suppressing the Sioux Uprising. Tasked with the order, Pope stated, quote, "It is my purpose to utterly exterminate the Sioux. They are to be treated as maniacs or wild beasts, and by no means as people with whom treaties or compromises can be made." Close quote. After the Sioux defeat, Lincoln ordered for the execution of 303 Indian prisoners of war, the largest mass execution ordered in American history, along with a promise to remove every last Indian from Minnesota. Furthermore, one of Lincoln's first acts as president was to pass the Pacific Railway Act of 1862, which sanctioned the construction of a transcontinental railroad from the Missouri River to the Pacific Ocean. Millions of acres of land would be required to complete the task, with one of the only small obstacles being that much of the planned route was inhabited by native tribes. Lincoln's solution was to send the army to slaughter them in mass and place the rest on reservations. This was accomplished under the leadership of General William T. Sherman, who, after being assigned the task by General Ulysses S. Grant, wrote, quote, "We are not going to let a few thieving, ragged Indians check and stop the progress of the railroads. We must act with vindictive earnestness against the Sioux, even to their extermination, men, women, and children." Close quote. He instructed his army that, quote, "During an assault, the soldiers cannot pause to distinguish between male and female, or even discriminate as to age. As long as resistance is made, death must be meted out." Close quote. Given these atrocities of Lincoln's army, it should come as no surprise that the quote, "The only good Indian is a dead Indian," is attributed to Union General Philip Sheridan. Commenting on the irony of Lincoln's Native American genocide, juxtaposed to the current image of him as a racial justice warrior, in his book The Real Lincoln, author Thomas DiLorenzo writes, quote, "The fact that the war against the Plains Indians began just 3 months after Lee's surrender calls into question yet again the notion that racial injustices in the South were the primary motivation for Northerners' willingness to wage such a long and destructive war. No political party purporting to be sensitive to racial injustice could possibly have even contemplated doing to the Indians what the United States government did to them." Close quote.